And from that idea, that became a partnership that together we raised $15 million together over the next 18 months. So again, like downside of that could have been like, it wouldn't work, or it didn't, he said no, or whatever. But it's just, there was really, besides just a little bit of ego, there wasn't really much that could go wrong. But again, it's just putting ourselves in those situations, even going to that event was an expensive event to go to, but being willing to put ourselves out there, and just learn.
Guys, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So today we're going to talk about cash flow. We're going to talk about mailbox money. All right. And so I have Mr. Bronson Hill with me today. And so let me tell you a little about him before I ask him to finish it and tell you about himself, or he's going to tell you more about himself than I can. And so he's the managing member of Bronson Equity, website bronsonequity.com. Bronson is the general partner of a 2,000 multifamily units worth over $200 million family meetup in Glendale, California, called the Investor. What is it? ITI?
Yeah, Investor to Investor. Yeah.
Investor to Investor. Okay. And he's the host of the Mailbox Money podcast. And so he understands the investor's mindset, which is what we want to get into today, having spoken individually on the phone to over 2,500 investors and raised over $40 million for real estate and his ATM fund deals. He's also the author. We'll talk about this, author of the book, because most of y'all want to do this. Fire Yourself. Replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less. Okay, how about that? That's going to be the title of the show. All right. And it is he's a regular contributor to YouTube and his blog, and he leads an exclusive mastermind. Of passive investors, providing unmatched investment opportunities within a growth-oriented community. That's a mouthful. Bronson, thank you. Welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Hey, Curtis, May, happy to be here, man. Love talking about money for life. I mean, if we can, do it the right way, money works for us rather than us working for money. So I love what you're creating for your audience here.
I see in the background the cash flow game, right, in the corner there. Yeah. And the first lesson, I asked people to say, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I said, what's lesson one? And they haven't really read it, right? So, but lesson one is rich people don't work for money, and they don't really know that, or money works for them. They just passes right over them. And whereas there's three types of income: earned, passive, portfolio, and then you don't work for money because it's the highest tax. So you've got to learn how to work yourself out of earned income so you keep more of what you make.
Yeah, so exactly. That's
Tell them a little bit about, everybody has what I call their origin story. Like Spider-Man, you're bitten by a radioactive spider, and now you can do all the Spider-Man thingies. What's your origin story of how'd you get into all this stuff?
Yeah, well, Curtis, it's I like telling it because I think a lot of people can relate. So I was a well-paid medical sales professional. I was making high six-figure income. And, I enjoyed what I did. I worked with surgeons. I would go into heart surgery and help physicians on what they were doing. And it was interesting. But the thing that I didn't have was really control over my time. And a lot of people will say, I want financial freedom. But really what we're after is really freedom of time, because you can have a lot of money. Money's just stuff. It fills your bank account, whatever. But the thing, a lot of people, even if you make a lot of money, for most people, it's still a time for money trade. I've got to go to work to get paid. I've got to work this many hours. Even physicians I would work with, some of them were making millions of dollars a year. They had to go do the procedure or else they didn't get paid. And so taking time off, especially in the medical field or professionals, is a lot of times very difficult. And in the US, we take on average 13 days off a year versus the average Italian takes 42 days off on average a year. So
they go on holiday. It's crazy. They'll be off for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the average. Some people are taking a lot more than that. So, but what I realized is in that process is that I needed to learn about passive income, and I had started to develop a small single family portfolio, started to develop some income there, but it realized it wasn't really as passive as I wanted. And so this is kind of a test I offer people, is if you can't 10x the size of what you're doing, so 10x the capital, or if you have 3 rental houses to go to 30 or something like that, then you're not really passive investing because you can't scale it. And so the idea of just learning about passive wealth, getting into things that provide mailbox money, provide tax benefits, other things, it's really the way that Warren Buffett says is that you can learn how to make money while you sleep, and so you don't work until you die. Or if you do work until you die, like Warren Buffett's in his 90s, he's still working. He describes tap dancing to work, right? So he can actually work in a way that he wants to. He can kind of structure his day how he wants. So I wanted to have that. So I was able to quit my job a few years ago, released this book behind me called Fire Yourself over here. And it's how to replace your working income with passive income in 3 years or less. Just really a guide on how do you actually get started in this. If you don't know anything about finance, you know anything about investing beyond stocks or bonds, how do you do this in real assets such as real estate or other alternative assets?
Love that. And one of the things, we talk about your Jim Rohn would always say most people don't have a money problem, they have a philosophy problem. And I think that people have been bought into what I call the accumulation theory: buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt. And so it's hard for people to let that go. And so have you experienced that? And then as you work with people, what are some of the mental blocks that keeps them from firing themselves, allowing them to I can be financially free in 3 years or less?
Yeah, so I've actually started writing a second book called Rich Brain, which is really about this. I've had the chance to interview individually over 2,500 millionaires, and so just there's lots of things that people do that are different, that are wealthy than those that are middle class. There's this belief that most people believe that people are either raised with money or they had all these advantages, but the data just says it's not true. If you look at the Fidelity Investment study they did in 2019, it says 86% of millionaires are self-made. So these are learnable things that we can do. So the first thing people do that are wealthy is they have to change their mindset. They've got to get into a growth mindset. They've got to look at things as things don't define you when you go through a failure. You've got to look at it like there's also an element of this that I thought was really fascinating about, I call it wealth worthiness. The idea that this is the thing that when we were a kid or we're younger or we go into a situation where we just know it's not going to go well. And so we sabotage ourselves, right? We're in, we want to ask the girl we like out, and then we totally stumble and don't do it right. Or we're giving a presentation and we flop. Well, it's because we haven't really internalized our worthiness that we actually can achieve and can do this. So that's the biggest thing. And there are some specific wealth habits that people do we can talk about. But I think the first thing is really just, it's not just having the stuff. There's this concept, I believe Robert Kiyosaki talks about, it's called be, do, have, right? So people want to have the stuff. Everybody wants to have the millions and have the jet and have all this stuff, but we don't want to do the work and become the person. And so this is why millionaires, people that, lottery winners, most of them go bankrupt within a series of years because they haven't learned the skills. So really the way to do it is to become the person who's a wealthy person internally. Like I know you talk about this in your stuff as well, is really your mindset, your things that you're thinking, the things that you're showing up in a certain way. And then when you become that, then you actually do the things that somebody who's wealthy and successful does. And then over time, it may take longer than you want, but then eventually you have the stuff. But it has to be that order, or else if someone just gives you the stuff or the rich uncle dies and all of a sudden you're wealthy, you're not going to know you're not going to be able to handle it. So I think that really getting in that place of understanding what wealth is, understanding who you are in light of it, and getting your mindset right is really so important.
That's awesome. I mean, we always say that investing is about becoming something, not about buying something. And I always say it's be, then do, then have. But most people just want to skip to the have. So they want, give me the easy button. I just want to give it into this, this qualified plan and hope this fund manager is really smart. And 86% of the millionaires don't do that.
Yeah.
So we say success leaves clues, right?
Yeah.
So, wow. Okay. And you're talking good. Keep going. What's
Well, it's really fascinating. I love too, you on your bookshelf there, Curtis, you got all those books behind you, and I'm a big reader. I think one of the habits that I've realized, so again, it's once the mindset is correct, and somebody, we can talk about worthiness a little bit more. Once we go into a situation, we know that we're worthy of it. We know we belong. Because a lot of times I show up, and I mean, I think it's human nature. We show up and this negative self-talk gets going, and I'm in the wrong room. I'm an imposter. What am I doing here? I'm not. Who are these amazing people? Whatever. And I've started. I mean, anybody who's successful, unless you're a total narcissist, experiences that. Unless you just have egomania, like almost everybody I know has had that. And so, but it's this continual reframe, is this self-talk of, I know I belong, I'm here, I can do this, I'm worthy of good things, all this. And the more we say that, so there's this practice that I call wealth whisperings. It's like affirmations, and it basically helps work on your ability to receive wealth, your ability, it sounds a little cheesy for some people. Hey, I'm looking in a mirror saying these things, but I'll give a really personal example. About 7 years ago, I went through a divorce, unfortunately, but I came out of this and I had no sense of self-confidence. I just felt totally defeated. I felt just, man, am I even okay with myself? I just felt like, what am I? Who am I? And I started to do these affirmations that really talked about confidence and worthiness and going into a room and owning the room, and that basically I'm a person of worth and value and character, and I'm loved by God, and there's a spiritual practice there as well. But just like being able to show up, and it didn't happen right away, but after 6 months, a year, 2 years, I started it started to come from within. It was like I knew on the inside that. And so there's things that I think, whatever our spiritual walk is, whatever our life is, we know in our heads to be true. We know people love us. We know we're people of value. We know we're important, but we don't feel it. And the only way to get it from here to your head into your heart is you have to meditate on it. You've got to say it. You've got to continue to do it. What happens over time is it starts to confront all these things that happen to us, or things people said to us that are counter to that. And then you've got a choice of, do you believe the old things, the old tape that was there, or are you allowing yourself to actually reprogram? And so what does this have to do with wealth? Again, it has to do with allowing it to come from within. So when you go into a situation, you'll see a business opportunity. You know that you can provide it. You know that you can get in investments with good people. And just over time, what happens is you start to live out of that. So it's amazing, the connection. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this too, but the connection between mindset and actual how it manifests in your life. And so every single person, just about, I would say not every single person, but most people I know that are very wealthy, I run a mastermind with net worth of 2 to 10 million or more. And, most of these people have some practices they do around mindset that are really working on getting things right, so they can show up in a way where they can live out of their values. They can be a person of significance and influence. And again, it may sound cheesy, but everybody knows that successful does it. So if it sounds cheesy, but it works, like what's wrong with it? So that's what I would say to someone who is interested in growing wealth, interested in, why do things just not go well for me? Well, a lot of it's in our self-talk and our mindset.
Everybody wants to skip that part. That is everything. Like, we can end the show right now. He just gave me the secret. See, but the problem is that's definitely a mic drop. But the secret is disguised as hard work, and it doesn't have immediate gratification and all of that. TikTok and a TikTok world where you want immediate gratification. That's not how this works. I've been on this journey for a long time. Where I didn't seem like it was working, and Myron Golden would say all work works, right? It's either working on you so you can become the person for whom the work works, right? Yeah. And so that's what you got to do. And that's everything. Boy, I love talking about this stuff. So what is the, where do we go from here? What should I be? My mind.
We can talk about habits. Yeah. So once from the book, I'll just give a couple things. I won't give it away. It's coming out in the fall, probably late fall, but I'm super excited about it. Everybody talked to about this book, Rich Brain. It's just like, how do you change your brain to change your bank account? Wealthy people do this. We talked about how they do it in mindset, but the other thing is, it's habits, right? So it's not just the idea of like, I can know all this stuff, I can internalize it, whatever. But like you said, you've got to do the work, right? Myron Golden, you actually do the work works if you do it. And so but it's not just, I don't think it's, some things will get you there faster. It's like, if I'm going to build a house and all I've got is a rock to hammer nails, it's going to take a long time. It's going to, but if I have the right tools, it's going to help me to get there. So what are those tools that these wealthy people are using? So having all these interviews, I've realized there's a couple kind of primary things, and I'll share one of them, and the other one, you got to get the book. But the first one really is that people that are wealthy, they look at learning as like a full-time or part-time job. So that they have it. It's a process where they're spending time and they're educating themselves. You look at Warren Buffett, he reads hours a day. Mark Cuban reads hours a day. Oprah Winfrey reads 30 to 60 minutes a day. A lot of billionaires will read. And you think, well, these are some of the most valuable people in the world that are just, their time is incredibly valuable, but they would sit around and read a book for hours, read different books. Bill Gates, similar thing. So what is it about reading? What is it about learning? What is it about these things? Is that what happens is over time, and I know you're a reader as well, that when we start reading and we start looking at things, we make these connections that seem unrelated. I read a biography about a historical figure, and all of a sudden something in my business is like, oh, that applies here, or that's, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. So we learn these things. If I learn a skill, if I read a book about something, I've never learned about this type of investing, or that this is something that you can do. Something I learned recently. I know you're a personal development guy. Tony Robbins wrote a book called The Holy Grail of Investing. Talks about something called GP stakes. And what that is you can actually invest in the operator who's operating a private equity deal. And that was just really interesting to me, all these interviews that are there. So people that are wealthy, they find ways to do it. Last year, I was able to read 98 books. I did it a lot of times through listening. I'm pretty auditory, so I can listen to books, and I still feel that does count. A lot of people say it doesn't count if you listen. It's like, it absolutely counts. But it's just being around.
I guess it counts. You can count it.
It counts. It counts. But great shows like this one, YouTube now, you can learn, you can watch people, you can listen to, podcasts. I'm going on a run later. I'll listen to, podcasts. I'll listen to books. And I think it's just, I make it a game. I make it a game because I know that every single year that goes by, I'm getting older, but my mind can be getting sharper and sharper. And so there's this incredible application. One is making connections between things in business and life. It's also super helpful in relating with people. That's why I love to travel. I've been to 45 countries. So there's this idea of everything is learning. So again, if you're just looking at life, even failure can be learning. Even going through something that's very difficult, like, the fixed mindset. There's a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And it says there's the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. The fixed mindset says, I went through this terrible thing, and so therefore I must not be good at this, or I'm not a good person, or I just should go do something totally different. It's this constantly living defeated. Growth mindset is nothing happens to me, everything happens for me. So I've had some setbacks. We've had some, our investment deals, a lot of them have gone great, a couple of them haven't gone well. And it's been hard to talk with investors and say, oh, this hasn't gone well. But to me, it's really been a growth journey to say, oh man, I can learn from this. And I learned some specific lessons. So when I go forward, I've got those lessons, right? And so I think that wealthy people, they are continually, constantly learning in every form that they can. They're very curious. And so, reading, getting, YouTube, going to conferences, talking with people, this is all a part of the learning that allows them to continue to grow their wealth. And Brian Tracy says, if you want to earn more, you have to learn more.
Yes, 100%. And because people ask me, how do you get all this stuff in? I don't know. I just do. I wait. I don't like running. So I walk. I do this kickboxing thing, but nice. I walk. I say, okay, I'm going to work out this afternoon. But when I walk or go to the gym, I have a podcast on. I have an audio book on. If I'm at the barbershop, I have a book in my hand. I mean, you sit down, you go to the bathroom, read something. Well, you don't make any money. Myron Golden said, if you don't make at least $100,000 a year, I don't know why you have cable. Right, because you don't need to be watching TV, so that's critical. But I love it. You say learning they view it as a full or part-time job. I know people that haven't read a book since they graduated high school or college. Yeah, and so you definitely don't have a growth mindset, and I think that's everything.
Well, there's some stats around this too. It's that the average American will read 12 books a year or less. That 50% of Americans read 4 books a year or less, but the average CEO will read between 55 and 60 books a year. So they're reading a book a week, right? They're finding a way. Some of the busiest people in the world, again, are finding a way to do it. So if they're doing it, if Warren Buffett, all these people are doing it, I mean, there's got to be something there. And I'm just seeing that.
Yes.
And you of course, I see your shell deals are just all shells of books, and you're not reading them. I imagine you probably read most of them.
I read everybody on that, just about everything on the shelf, not counting my Kindle.
Yeah,
the white papers in my iPad and my Audible account. Yeah, so I'm a nerd, right?
Yeah,
so
love it. No,
and so there was a saying. You probably haven't heard. This is a kind of a racial thing. I hate to say it this way, but I heard when I was in college, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. So I decided then and there that that's not going to be my reality. And so I was telling my wife, I said, I think I've read at least a book a week, or at least 2 or 3 books a month for the last 30 years.
Amazing.
And so that's, the trajectory of my income. Now you got to work because this mindset, skill set. So now we're going to move into, what you've been able to do in terms of building your company, because you've learned your skills is what makes money, right? So solving problems, because money's a result, right, of creating value in the marketplace, right? Solving problems for other people. And so now you've got to do, so if you don't make enough money because you don't have developed enough skills, why don't you have enough skills? Because you don't read anything, watch anything, listen to anything, or hang around people that are winning. I always try, Bronson, I want to be the dumbest, brokest person in the room, right? So sure. I'm always trying to put myself in uncomfortable situations where I have to learn, And and the last thing I just thought about, you said connectors. I'm listening to Uncle Charlie's Almanac right
Yeah, me
now.
too. I'm actually doing that right now. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
so I'm
listening to that
reading
right
that
now.
and the letters from J.D. Rockefeller to his son. So I'm going back and
Okay.
forth between that one.
Oh,
That's a
wow.
good one too.
Okay, I haven't
And
read that one.
that's a good one. Somebody told me it's on YouTube, but I would buy it, and it's a good listen because you can hear the language of Rockefeller wanted to be the richest person in the world. He was like 8, right? And
Yeah.
then he started out, he was basically a bookkeeper, and he parlayed that in Standard Oil, but that was his objective. And then he's passing down that language to his son. I mean, so you would love that. So I'm gonna that's
Yeah.
hopefully I
Okay,
give
I'm
you
gonna
some
write that
value there.
down.
It's like 38 letters. 38 letters is from J.D. Rockefeller to his son, and
Love it.
it's something like that. I'm butchering the title, but what Charlie Munger said. I have this other book on him and Warren Buffett. This guy wrote called. Of course, I can't find it. The joy of compounding. So it talks about
Yeah.
the lattice work of connections, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So when you read a lot of stuff from different stuff, all of a sudden you can connect. You see the
Right.
connection between this and over here where it doesn't seem like they connect. And I'm like, okay, I see. All of a sudden I'll see stuff, and I was like, I can connect the dots. Part
Yeah.
of that's my
Yeah.
Colby too. I'm good at like taking
Yeah.
your thing and making it my thing. I'm a
Yeah.
7 fact find, and but
Great.
I like to facilitate stuff, and that's what you'll be able to do. So all of a sudden, all the dots will connect if you
Yeah.
just do that and then do the work, right? It's becoming,
Right.
right? So, because I always tell people activity produces knowledge. Knowledge
Yeah.
does not produce activity. So you got to, Emerson said, if you want the power, you got to do the thing.
Yeah. No, we have a lot of synergies. I can tell. Tony Robbins, he talked, as well. He said that he had an application. The idea of pattern recognition, right? That when you see things over time in books, it allows you to be like, oh, I've heard this before. I've seen this before. I see how
Yeah.
Rockefeller, I see how Buffett, I see how this other person, like you see it. And then when you walk, you're like, oh, wow. But no one maybe has seen that connection before, or at least in your situation. So that's what gives you these fresh eyes. And then, I mean, you're absolutely right. You can learn all this stuff. And a lot of people are just purely, and I kind of admire people that like just do it for the sake of knowledge and they nerd out all this stuff and they love it. But
Right.
I'm a very practical person. Like I've realized like over time, I'm glad I've continued to delve into books and learning and stuff, but it is about the application. It's what can I use from this? And so it's great when you read, have a notebook nearby, or be thinking about who, maybe who can I share this with or something, because as you help
That's a
other
clue.
people,
Have a notebook, not to cut you off. I just want to make that point right there.
Yeah,
right. Because you got to have like half of my bookshelf back there is like a third of it is my journals from the notes I've taken from the books or stuff I've been, okay, wait, let me bookmark that and let me go back to that, and I'll write about the highlights and then my thought about what I learned, and then eventually I start being able to apply it to something. But you got to work at knowledge.
Yeah, that's it. No, it really it's a practice. It's something you work at, and then as you are learning, it's just that constant question: how can I apply this? What can I do with this? A great question to ask is, who can I share this with? Who can I help? Who also can use this? And it's amazing too, as we put ourselves in the seat of like, hey, this is something that might help someone else. If I'm getting someone else, who else can benefit from this? I've realized some of the people I admire the most are great at taking information and giving it to other people. And there's two benefits to that. One is that, first of all, you're helping someone else and they get to know you as a person of value. And it's just great. It feels great for me to help someone else.
Yeah.
But it also is like really beneficial for them. So I get known as a connector. I connect them to resources. I connect them to people. You should meet this person, whatever. I'm always making those connections because it's been said people will be loyal to you based on the amount of transformation they experience from you. So if I'm sharing resources, I'm sharing introductions, I'm sharing books, I'm going to be that person who's a connector. The second thing that happens, Curtis, is as I learn something, as if I teach it to someone else, or if I share a book or somebody read it and we have a conversation about it, they say, if you want to learn something, you really want to learn it and master it, you teach it to someone else. So it's something that as I'm getting value from stuff, I'm always sharing, and it actually allows me to recall better and to go back and be like, oh, that was a really great thing because I shared it with somebody. So it's funny how there's a lot of people that think that, oh, if I need to hold my secrets close and not tell my secret sauce of what I do. But the more I share what works and what's working in my life, and the I'm creating value for other people, And then the more it comes back to me, right? Because then people say, well, I trust this guy, right? I trust that he's out here doing this because he just wants to help. And same with you. You're out here giving this stuff for free that people are charging lots of money for, and they're this kind of show and all the stuff that you're giving them. And so I think that it's amazing what is available if we just are not only learning, but we're putting it into practice, and we're also sharing with other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jim Rohn says, and I try to do this, is like I do a Saturday class for my members and clients, and I just practice. Here's what I'm learning. Hey, I just learned this, and I learned a long time. If you want to get good at something, practice, study, and teach.
That's it.
And the teaching pulls it down so that because if you can't draw it out on a whiteboard, you don't know it.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Right. And so you practice, and then I'll try to do it with kids they're like the same thing I teach. I'll try to teach it to teenagers and see how young I can go to the same financial talk I'll give to their parents. I would try to do it with the kids because I want to see if I can get them to understand it, because it's not what I say, is what they hear. Because you really, the people that win the lectures, I was listening to Russell Brunson's book, I think it's Expert Secrets, that you speak on a third grade reading level. So I'm all right. It's all right. It's not how smart I am, especially as in the financial space, the financial advising space. I don't want to talk over their head. I don't, because I want you, it's your money. Can be more important to me than it is to you. So I need you to be able to separate facts from somebody's sales pitch. So we're going to talk about it till you get it and it's clear as day, or I'm not going to even let you move forward. Right.
Totally. Yeah.
So tell them. So now y'all got a good feel for our brother here, that he's a good man and he wants to help. So I want you to tell him about, Bronson Equity, what you're doing, about your show and the books coming out. Give them a little idea of what you're doing and how you might be able to serve.
Yeah. So one thing, going back to this story I was sharing when I started out, I just realized, really creating, when I'm working for money, I'm kind of a slave to it. But when my money works for me, I can use it. And so I realized I had this revelation maybe 6-7 years ago, where it's like, I'm making like $200K in my job, which is amazing. It was an amazing job to have. I was working 30, 40 hours. I felt super blessed to be doing that. But I realized, like, if I was able to get 10 or 20K of passive income a year, that was more powerful than making, because, a lot of the passive income, I was able to, pay less taxes or no taxes on it. Right. So I realized for me, instead of making 200K, I can make 150 or maybe 140, and it was the same. So I realized, like, maybe I didn't need to replace my income, right? That's one thing to fire yourself, is that we think we need to replace our current income. A lot of times we look at our living expenses, we can say, well, what do I need to be able to cover my living expenses? Well, that's your freedom number, right? We talk about, cash flow 101 and some of the Rich Dad Poor Dad. What's your rat race number? So to me, it was about 70K a year, so about $6,000 a month. And I was like, oh, I can do that. That's something I could do. And I started to figure that out. And then I got to where I was free. So what we do is we have multifamily investing, which provides cash flow appreciation and tax benefits. We've branched out the last couple of years and done a lot of stuff in the business space with car washes and private businesses and oil and gas. We've come back to multifamily recently. We're seeing stuff significantly discounted right now, 20 to 30% or more, in great markets that are booming. So we love doing that just because of the stability of it and of the asset. So again, it's people come to us for one of three reasons. It's to solve a problem. It's either cash flow, which is, if you want to leave your job, if you're working on your, growing your income outside of your job, that's great. If you're already wealthy, maybe just appreciation is great. Or if you have retirement accounts, and if you're a high earner, you're paying a lot in taxes. And so we've had stories of people that, I have in my book, I talk about this. There's a whole chapter on tax strategy. We had they're brothers and they're in the medical field, and they had a $5 million sale of 2 dental practices in California. And then they were able to reduce their taxable basis to about from over $2 million down to 125,000. And it would have gotten to zero, but it's California, so there was a challenging way to get around it. But anyway, so that stuff is possible. So a lot of times, instead of saying, well, I can't do that, it's, well, how can I do that? So we try to help find solutions to those problems through investment opportunities and the education we provide.
That's great. So what you're kind of like the managing, it's like it's like a syndication?
Yeah, syndication. I look at myself as I'm a fund manager. So my goal is, I'm a real estate guy. That's my background. I've been doing it for 20 years. And so I'm involved, more involved in the real estate projects we do. But in general, my goal with a lot of our stuff is to own everything and operate nothing, right? I want to be like my investors, where I'm able to go on vacation. I traveled 6 times internationally last year. Next month, I'm going to Ireland. I've got Portugal in the fall. I went to the base camp of Mount Everest, which is not climbing Everest, but I did that in April, May, and went to India. So, I that's, for me, that really charges me up. It's education. I
You're
love it.
firing me up, dude. I've been to, let me see, 2 countries this year. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
wait, 98
Yeah.
books, 45 countries. So I'm making a list. Okay, I need a new thing to shoot for.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, and we all run our own race. So it's,
Yeah.
and speaking of that, I do Spartan races, which are like these obstacle course races. So we all have things we do, but it's just when you're freed up, most people don't like what they do. It's something like 65 or 70% say they're not engaged at work. They don't like their boss, they don't like their job. It's a tragedy. Really, we're doing things because it's comfortable, because we don't know there's anything else we could do, and we're doing it because we kind of have to. Versus for me with my job, it was my whole family said to me, like, you have this great job. Why would you ever leave your great job? But none of them were entrepreneurial. And then I was in an entrepreneurs group at the same time. And I told them, I said, hey, I really want to leave my job, but I'm just doing too well. How do we leave? And they all, without exception, said, you should leave your job pretty much as soon as possible to go do this full time, because you're doing this part time. Look what you could create if you did this full time. And so, and they said, if it doesn't work, you could always go back to your job and then go get another job. And I was like, oh, I didn't really think of it that way. So it's funny how who you surround yourself with is very important too.
Right. Security is, I've heard this, tell me if you believe this, is really the ability to produce, right? So if you know that you have the skill set to make money, you're not really at risk. So you could get another job because, most people are sorry. So it's not like you can't get another job, but if you can create revenue from the stuff that you learn, that's the ultimate confidence of being able. That's part of becoming. That's why the first part of our talk that you mentioned was so important, because you could leave your job. You know how to generate cash flow. You've got, what I hear is a control of your expenses. So even though you were grossing 200 grand, you lived on less than 100.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it's an equation, right? So, if you live on more than what you're making, that's not going to last very long, right?
That's
You're going to
right.
have a lot of pain. If you're doing it the other way, you're going to do well. And that's why people that are savers, that are investors, and, there's a quote also from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or from Robert Kiyosaki. He says that the wealthy, they invest first, and they live on what's left over, right? They find a way to invest and just substantially invest and live off of the cash flow and other things like that. People that are middle class will spend and live first, then they'll invest what's left over. And it's subtle, but there's a switch that can happen. That was a big shift for me too, of, well, how much can I possibly invest and still live and be okay? And what do I do in my business to push myself so that I'm investing way more than I think I can, as long as I'm not over leveraged, but where I can make more in the business. So I'm continuing to do that, because it's almost like you're putting money away that's going to be worth more later. You're really investing for the future. And that's the snowball concept, that a great book called The Snowball about Warren Buffett. It's a very thick book, but amazing book. And he just started young, and at 14 years old, he owns, he's out there doing paper routes at 12. And then at 14, he owns some land, and he has tenant farmers, and he's got a pinball machine company.
Right.
And all these things are just, they buy a limo that is an old limo, and they fix it up and they rent it out for $100 a day. Like they just find things to do. And so that's great to be able to experiment and figure out what works. And so the people that are successful, they've just been very good at doing that over time.
To me, that's investing. See, people say, well, the fastest path to cash is a business. Like, so you see, he had a bunch of little bit, all those were investments. See, we think investing is giving it to some fund manager who we never meet, is mutual funds, because that's what Wall Street has trained us. But it's really, I was listening to what's her name? Cody. It's a woman.
Sanchez.
Cody Sanchez. Right? I was there just listening on my walk with her, and Russell Brunson just did an interview. So I was fascinating thing. But I love her because she's out, buying laundromats and that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to kind of teach people, if you don't have a lot of capital, then you got to make it happen. You got to do little, Laura Landmeyer calls them, you got to build cash machines. You got to, $500 or $1,000 where you can sell, you got to sell something, but that gives you the skills that you need to begin to, and learning how to do your books and all that stuff is the growth that you need to get to where you are, right? It started early.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's the habits, it's the actions, it's the moving, it's the one step forward. And I think some people, it's interesting how this process works too. A lot of people take lots of action, and they just they don't really take time to reflect on what's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to work really hard and go for it, but then take a step back and be like, is this really going where I want to go? Or maybe I should stop doing this and go do this over here. And so it's this, like, I look at my life as like a series of low risk experiments, right? So it's not like if something doesn't work out, I'm going to lose all my money or I'm going to die, or, like those are high risk. But it's like, hey, if this doesn't work, I'm going to do some learning over here. I'm going to try this new thing. I do this in my business. I do it in personal. I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, I'm out some of my time and I learned something, right? But it's not, and maybe there's a little bit of like, okay, I was hoping this would work and it didn't, but I've gotten really comfortable with that. Of just people know I'm going to try different things. My audience now knows I'm going to try different things, and some things are going to work phenomenally well. Some things are not going to work, and so it just frees me up to be like, I'm going to try things, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't define me, right? The mindset doesn't define me. It's just something, it's learning. And so I think for people in their personal life, if we did that and we said, well, I'm just going to go try different things. And I mean, it could be, I think in our 30s, 40s and older, people stop reading books. They stop trying new things. What if, if somebody learned a new language, they started taking dance lessons, they started traveling. These are all things that are great for your brain. They open up new things. You go to local meetups, you go to conferences. You're going to come up against things and people that you never, ever met before. I went to an event one time, was an investor event on a cruise. And I talk about this in my book, where I had raised $100,000 for one deal, right? I had a meetup. I raised a little money for a deal. And then I was trying, how do I scale? How do I scale? What do I do? Well, I went to this event and we were sitting around a table and there was some kind of networking going on, but people were talking. And this guy said this off the cuff comment that said, it's like that comment, or it's like that quote from Jim Rohn, who's a motivational speaker, and he said, make yourself valuable to valuable people. And I thought, make yourself valuable to valuable people. And I thought, well, there's this other guy on this cruise that I've got a ton of value from. So I'm going to approach him and just see if I can help him in his business. So I thought about it. Well, here's something maybe I could do. So that maybe we could come together, and I pitched him on something. And from that idea, that became a partnership that together we raised $15 million together over the next 18 months. So again, like the downside of that could have been like, it wouldn't work, or it didn't, he said no, or whatever. But it's just, there was really, besides just a little bit of ego, there wasn't really much that could go wrong. But again, it's just putting ourselves in those situations, even going to that event was an expensive event to go to, but being willing to put ourselves out there, and just learn and just continue to try.
That is awesome. How should they, if they want to follow up with you, who should be calling you? And then like to work with you, maybe, and then how can they follow you, follow the show, and get the book, more importantly, and follow, and then get on a list so they can be notified when the new book comes out? Because I want to know that one. I'm gonna get this one, and then I want to know the other one.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, thanks. So the book Fire Yourself, it's a bestseller on Amazon. You can find it there. The next book, Rich Brain, will be out soon, but you can check out Fire Yourself on Amazon. I have a free gift for your audience. It's another thing I write quite a bit, but there's a book or an ebook I wrote called How to Use Inflation to Your Advantage. So again, a lot of times we're getting the pain at the pump, where groceries cost 50% more than they did 4 or 5 years ago. But there's a way that you actually can get on the other side of that equation by owning assets, using debt, using creative things that you likely haven't heard of, even some stuff in precious metals, just some stuff that's really unique, that it's really how to use it to your advantage. So it's a 40-page PDF. Love to share that with you. If you text the word inflation to 33777, so the word inflation to 33777, and you can get that for free, and that'll put you, getting in touch, put it on our list, and we'll share about upcoming stuff. If you want to hear about our deals, you can go to bronsonequity.com. We typically work with folks that net worth of at least 500,000 or more, and we have unique opportunities in real estate, outside of real estate. We're looking to connect with people that are looking to grow passive wealth. So if any of that's interesting, we'd love to connect with whoever, any of your audience that would love to connect. So let's connect.
So they don't have to be accredited. So net worth minus liabilities. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we have some. We have some deals that are we're having quite a few now that are for non-accredited, and then we have some that are for accredited only. So it's a variety. It's both. And so and then we can share about some of the other offerings and stuff we have too.
That is awesome. So check it out. So you're going to text inflation 33777.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. To get the ebook
guide. Yeah.
And we'll put all that in the show notes. And Bronson, you got any words of wisdom to take us out? Because you've been on fire.
Oh, thanks, man. Well, I feel like talking with you, it's like fire, man. We're both reading the same books. We're quoting each other. I love it. So I think you quote about as much as I do, which is great. So I'm excited to have you on my show, the Mailbox Money Show. So that's a show we talk about all these topics, a lot of different assets. So it's things from real estate, developments, oil and gas, tax strategy, all the stuff, right? So if somebody's a passive investor learning how to grow wealth or wants to figure that out, we've got all kinds of resources there. But really happy to be here, Curtis. Thanks for having me. Excited to have you on my show as well.
Yes, guys, go out there. This has been a great. I'm so excited. I'm so far. Listen, y'all can't. You probably can tell. My listeners know me. I'm fired up right now. This is awesome. So I thank you again for being a guest. I look forward to sharing. Hopefully, I can be as good on your show.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be great, man. We're gonna have a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So let's go out there, guys. Make it a prosperous day. Listen to this show. Share it. I know y'all need somebody that needs to hear this, because the first half of the show is all about mindset, and that's what it's become. So he gave you a master class on becoming. All right. So go out there, make it a great day. Leave us a review, and we will see you next time.